Jeanette Hancock, the details and the records of the Newry workhouse very much are part of your bread and butter at the Public Records Office.
They are indeed. The records of the Newry workhouse are part of a wider collection relating to the Boards of Guardians in the north of Ireland. So we have records covering 27 unions, Newry included, and we've a fairly sizable collection relating to Newry.
You used the word unions there. In what context?
The unions were basically administrative divisions. The Poor Law Act of 1838 was really the first established state provision for welfare of the poor in Ireland, and it was modelled on an English poor law system which was implemented a few years earlier. So it basically divided Ireland into unions, and these unions were based on electoral divisions and the townlands within.
And then you had guardians. You mentioned guardians. They were the implementers of the legislation.
Yeah, the guardians, the Boards of Guardians were elected representatives. So, for example, I think there were 30 elected guardians for the Newry Union, and there were also 10 additional appointed ex officio guardians.
Yes.
So, obviously, to be elected, they had to be ratepayers.
Yeah.
So
were they the great and the good of the community?
To a degree, you could say they were, because they had to be ratepayers. So in essence, that eliminated quite a majority of the population who would have been tenants at the time.
Yes, yes. And it was from the tenant class that the workhouses gained their occupants.
Yeah, it probably was. The tenant class, the Poor Law was set up to relieve and alleviate the suffering and care for the poor. However, it was very much instituted to make sure you had to work for relief, and they were very, very adamant that the workhouse shouldn't be seen as an easy ride. So conditions were deliberately harsh.
In the hope that you would leave the workhouse and
in
go
the
back
hope
into
that
the
you
work.
wouldn't go in, and families were segregated, males and females were segregated. The problem was that for a lot of people, life on the outside or society in Ireland, conditions were very harsh to begin with, so it was actually quite difficult to make them a lot worse for a lot of people. But certainly the idea was that it was not to be a refuge for able-bodied workers. And originally they would have implemented a scheme of public works alongside, whereby people would have had to work for poor relief, and really going into the workhouse was seen as very much a last resort.
And would they have gone into the workhouse and then come out to participate in the public relief scheme and gone back to the workhouse in the evening? Did it work like that?
I think the public relief scheme was intended to provide a job. I think there's an historical debate on that as to whether the issues with the poor were through idleness. A lot of commentators would have argued that really that wasn't the case. The problem in Ireland was that there were lots of able-bodied people willing to work. There just wasn't work available for them.
Yeah, goodness gracious.
So the public works scheme was in operation, but really that changed quite substantially during the famine period, because really people were not able to work, and the public works scheme was eventually wound down during the famine, and it was replaced by a scheme of outdoor relief, which was basically payments to people who were in need, who did not come into the workhouse, but relief for people on the land.
You've had the opportunity of skirting over, I suppose, to use a loose term, the details of all of this, the workhouses across the land. Taking all of the imperfections and taking all of the difficulties, was the island of Ireland a better place, do you think, for having had the workhouses?
I think that's an interesting historical debate. Certainly during the famine period, it's received a lot of criticism that the system didn't work. I think there's an historical debate that says when it was first implemented, whilst it did meet considerable opposition at the time, there was a feeling that it was supported in some areas as well. I think really the severity of the situation during the famine period, it's become very much associated, and the inadequacies of provision, it's part of the wider picture of inadequate provision for the poor during that period. But having said that, the Board of Guardians actually in Northern Ireland, and currently Northern Ireland, ran right up until it was replaced by the welfare state in the 1940s. So it continued to provide accommodation for individuals, destitute, poor, orphan children, and provided a social function that lasted right up almost into the mid-1900s.
Would the Board of the Guardians have been good people?
I suppose it's like anything else. Some would have been exceptionally good and would have been in there for the right reasons. Others may have been equally interested in the authority that came with being a guardian, because it provided quite a social welfare function, and they were involved in quite a lot of local authority administration, which became sort of more progressively more phased out towards the end of the 1800s and the 1900s. But they had other remits, including vaccination, sanitation and public health, building of fever hospitals, so it wasn't just solely restricted to the workhouse per se.
They were kind of, it seems to me, a kind of harbinger of the councils that were to follow later on.
To a degree they really were, and a lot of the functions that the Guardians originally would have had would eventually transfer into local authorities. And part of that was the setting up of corporations as well. So yes, there was quite a significant welfare function provided.
The modern Public Records Office, what's your remit? What other kind of things do you do?
Well, our statutory remit is to collect the records of government. We were established in 1923 as post-partition as part of the Public Records Act of Northern Ireland. So we're 90 years young this year, actually. We've just moved into new accommodation in Belfast Titanic Quarter, so I would urge everybody to come for a visit. We have a lovely new building there. So yeah, we collect the records of government departments. We also collect non-departmental public bodies such as court records, schools, hospitals, and in addition we collect a lot of privately deposited material, and that can range from anything from church records to diaries, photographic collections, business records, landed estate records. So we have a wealth of information in Pronay.
Can people, individuals, apply to you and say, look, I have a compendium of family history over the last 200 years. Please, may I give it to you? Will you examine things like that?
Yeah, we do. We have we have sort of rules and guidelines as to what we take as deposits. Generally, the rule of thumb is the material we hold is unique and it's not duplicate copies. So we're not like a library in that you can't come in and borrow. The majority of what we have is completely unique. So yeah, we would appraise anybody's collections, and I would urge anybody to get in touch, and somebody will be happy to speak to them with regard to any potential deposits.
So how do people contact you?
Go to our website,
which is
the first port of call, www.prony.gov.uk.
Prony, that's P-R-O-N-I.
It is.
We'll say it again because people will be at the moment getting pens and pencils. So it's www, glasses are necessary too. Prony, P-R-O-N-I. And that means Public Records Office, Northern Ireland.
It does.
Prony, dot gov.uk. That's very straightforward.
And you'll find lots of information on there. A lot of people come into Prony to research family and local history.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So we have a number of online databases available on the website. We have lots of information, leaflets, which will help people get started in their research.
Excellent.
We have an online catalogue. So if anybody's interested in the likes of Board of Guardians or Newry Workhouse records, they can go and have a look and see what's available and prepare for their visit. So Public Record Office is free to use and open to
Okay.
everyone. Our opening hours are on there. Just bring photographic ID the first day you visit. You
Yeah.
get a visitor card and you're, in essence, good to go.
You're good to go.
Yeah.
And we'll remind the people again, www.prony, as in Public Records Office Northern Ireland, prony.gov.uk.
Thank
for
you very
coming in.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best.